Welcome to the bold analysis, ladies and gentlemen. I am doing this video back home in a place we call the beautiful places, the Green City, or rather the Green Say County. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday on Monday, the country was getting a lot of interest from Eric Omondi, who held a demonstration in town about the cost of living. I managed to eavesdrop in a WhatsApp group invite where he was inviting himself, he was inviting journalists to go and cover his protest. And interestingly, in that, he said that kesho nitakuwa na vipindire town. That was a message that was sharing on Sunday. So for him, it was a bit of that vipindire, but it was well organized. But I can even tell you that everything is normally done there, normally stage managed. Plus, even those who are arresting, also they have been organized and everything is normally in place. And that's why that mass action never takes place, never takes long. But be it as it may, not many Kenyans would actually look at it from that point of view. There are quite a number that are actually seeing Eric Omondi pushing an agenda. Even though his look of bit of vipindere, he might be branding it all sorts of names, but there is something he's communicating. I'm talking about, I'm using that example because since the discussion about talks between Raila Odinga and William Ruto started, there have been mixed reactions from the Azimio supporters who are asking many questions. Are we looking at another handshake? Many people are saying no, we don't want. The other question here is, if we are to take that way, one of the main reasons, demands that motivated the young Kenyans to go to the street to protest was about the cost of living. Looking at what William Ruto has so far spoken about, he is actually talking about, he's not talking about the cost of living, he's talking about the IBC issue. Now today, I am glad that Raila Odinga visited some Azimio diehards who were injured and were actually hospitalized in Bagadi Hospital. Now, these were very important because as I was just trying to prep for this analysis, I got that information. And then it really caught my attention because the question that many have been asking here is, where does this put Azimio supporters? Were they taken for a ride? And remember, Raila Odinga faced this backlash even after the last handshake where he was highly criticized. That despite of many Kenyans coming out to join the mass action by then, when the handshake came in, many of them were left in the dark. So a decision to include visiting some of these injured youths that were injured during mass action is a point that he's trying to communicate, that he doesn't want to lose contact with them, number one. Number two, he's saying to psych up and say that we are still part, or rather the struggle is still going on. I think that's a bit of the motivation of those who are still there. So that gesture was very important for him to go and visit them. And I want to believe it is part of a strategy, or rather it's part of his strategy to find a way in which he can still tag along the Kenyan youth or the Kenyan people that went out for the protest. But then we'll feel like, what is happening? Are they getting a raw deal? So in this analysis, I will want to pick it up from there and look at strategically what would help Raila Odinga not to lose track of the masses. Remember, in the wake of that mass action, the hustlers were swinging on his side because he was speaking about a problem as to whether he had the right prescription to solve it. But Kenyan politics thrives on giving people hope. And he was giving the young people hope in this country that perhaps after this, we are going to see a change. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say something, that being that you see protests organized by Omondi is not a man on himself. Of course, there might be other forces behind it. But if a protest has been, the demo has been stopped, but to see a continuation of these demos, probably looking at it in the angle of what exactly is needed to be done, or rather on the cost of living, then it points out something very clearly, that the discussion about the cost of living is still going to remain with us here for some time. And when that narrative comes up and sink, reality Kenyans will start asking questions. What next? Or what about it? Kindly subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell and like our video. Thank you very much for your support. I want to say and repeat, Raila Amolo Odinga must, number one, ensure and make sure the server questions must be answered. Whether it is going to be, even if the bipartisan parliamentary approach is not going to take that route, but it is a question that must be on the table. If it is not on the table, then we are simply drifting from the plot. Let me tell you, I've been doing analysis and I sample reactions. Whenever you do an analysis on the question of server, many people are really reacting to it because that is it. If Raila Odinga will allow, and I'm glad that they seems to be insisting, they're keeping a lot of tabs. I know they're talking about the meeting that was held before, probably the Sunday meeting that was convened before the dialogue talks were actually arrived at. And from what I understand is that Raila is pushing strongly using the server question as a trigger to what next is really needed. Even if there could be no legal recourse to what the Azimio is claiming, the stolen victory. But the question of server, the way they have insisted it must be answered, William Ruto, I think with Raila Odinga, if the spark, the opposition is supposed to hold spark of the masses, they must, they should, and it is not about if, it is about a must. The question of the server must be answered, and I know many are talking about it. Do you expect William Ruto to open the server? I want to agree with those who are saying there could be no legal path to it. But then, the Azimio supporters must then be convinced, for even all those other questions to get the goodwill, that there is something being done in the light of what Raila Odinga raised. That's it. Otherwise, if that question is not answered, then all those queries that Raila Odinga team were asking would actually not be they will not get the traction. So I'm glad that even Raila Odinga, I was checking at, I've been reading some multiple media reports, and the pressure is piling on Raila to answer that question. He must corner Ruto, whether Ruto tries to dodge it as he wants, whether Ruto tries to give it diversions, but then that question do not need a diversion. You can delay it, but ultimately, I think you must give it an answer. Now, secondly, to Raila Odinga, the price of Wunga was at the height of mass action. If you are to sample, to do random sampling on protesters, moments after or even now, and get exactly those who turned out to go and protest, you might realize that nearly 50% spoke about stolen election, and another 50% said, we don't want politics, and even if you've robbed us, but then work for us. The cost of living, and let me not put it at the cost of living, the cost of Wunga was at the center of it. If you keep quiet on this, then you'll be seen as someone who has actually betrayed the masses. It is not a bad, it was not, in fact, for me, it was not a bad decision for the ceasefire, because I think I insisted in this channel that at the right time, we might delay, we can use the huge English we're using in the political podium, but in the fullness of time, the decision to talk, we will all agree that we cannot take the country that direction. But then we were going, I was talking to someone who was telling me Kenyans are very tricky. On Monday, they are very harsh, politically charged. Tuesday, everyone is back to work. Wednesday, everyone is back to work. Now, Thursday, they are politically charged. Now, that was from initial 2 weeks. Now, let me tell you, the more that would move with the array of destruction in Mount Kenya politicians running the narrative that Raila is destroying their property, we were actually building that momentum. It was gathering steam. It would have gotten to a point even those who were really talking about it could not even be in a position to control it. Two things. Raila must not lean towards Ruto at whatsoever cost. Raila Odinga must not lean. If you lean towards Ruto, that's where you miss the gap. Now, I think there also push needs to give alternative solutions so that you carry the aspirations of the people. Even if you can run alternative projects, those that can be done, you can still do something and give the solution-based approach. But again, do not forget to call out William Ruto when everything is not going right. That's my bold. Let's meet in the next.